Welcome to the I'm Great podcast. I'm your host, Eugene Walker, and we got another special guest here, my guy, Benjamin Morton, man. How are you doing,
Hey,
man?
doing good, Eugene.
This is a friend of a friend, so DJ put me in contact with him, and he's here from, where you here from?
From Maryland, Washington, D.C. area.
Maryland, Washington, D.C., man. So it's great to have you on here, and appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and do this with me. So go ahead and tell the people who you are and just some accomplishments you're currently doing, and just flex on them a little bit.
Okay. Well, again, like I said, I cruised in from Washington, D.C. area yesterday to meet with DJ. Some entrepreneur things that he and I are working on, some corporate ventures that he and I are working on. How we met, I'll kind of give you a little idea about that. I was invited to Nairobi, Kenya,
Mm,
this past July 2022 to speak and support a friend over there in a speaking engagement. Not being a public speaker, I was a little reserved about going, but I decided to go and participate in it, see what it was like. And so DJ was actually there, and that's how we met. We became really good friends. We got to know each other. Some entrepreneur ventures that he's working on, some things that I was doing. He learned that I'm an attorney by trade,
mm,
that I played professional basketball, and that I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. And his dad is actually from Detroit, Michigan, and his
mm.
dad went to Cass Tech High School. I don't know his dad personally, but we actually know some. We have some friends and some people in common. So small world. So from that, DJ and I, we kind of really got to know each other. He invited me out before. I came out to Kansas. Only been to Kansas twice now. This being my second time, and we talked about doing some things together with respect to some joint ventures, our corporate ideas, blessing people, trying to make a difference in the world, especially in our community. And so a lot of things are starting to sort of take root
Mm.
that we're looking to do. Some things that I'm looking to do here with the suicide and prevention with respect to the high schools. I understand that the suicide prevention rate here, especially in the African American community, is rather high. I learned that the state of Kansas is actually in last place of 52 states. It's the 52nd state with respect to the resources that they put into mental health and suicide prevention. So I've been asked through my think tank, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. My think tank being the Powerful and Positive Pivot, I've been asked to come and participate in that on, I think it's March 21st, and be the keynote speaker. So a lot of good things are happening from my visit to Kenya and getting to know DJ, and of course, getting to know him as a result of me getting to know you. So
Man,
it's all been a blessing and very exciting.
man. So just talk about how important networking is because, and just having the right conversations because if you guys never had that conversation, you wouldn't even be here today.
I mean, you can't even put a monetary value on it because I would say it's just I don't know, it's astronomical of the potential that it's limitless, if you would. The potential of just sitting down, talking to people, getting to know people. We call it chopping it up. I really call it brainstorming and think tanking.
Mm,
I like to get ideas and talking. And sometimes you just make a good friend. And it's not necessarily what will evolve into a business contact, but you never know who that person knows that you'll eventually meet and something else will come from it. So the power of networking is limitless and is something that I would like to continue doing. And I would always encourage people to just be friendly and talk. And you can be in an airport, you can be in a grocery store, you can be in the mall. You never know who you're meeting and who God is placing in your sphere of experience that can lead to something else. And it's not always about leading to something else for you. You can actually become an asset and a resource to somebody else because they can use a story or something that you're doing or looking to do to help encourage them and to lead them and I guess down an avenue that they were hoping to go, and you can be a vital part of that. So
mm.
networking is definitely a good thing.
Man, so let's get into your story, man. So talk about just growing up in Detroit, Michigan, man. How was the life growing up in Detroit?
That was an interesting life. I'll just say this: I'm one of nine children. I'm the eighth child of nine children.
So you one of
Uh,
the babies.
One of the babies. I think they call me the knee baby. I think it
Mm,
is. So mom and dad was from the South. Neither one of them graduated high school.
mm,
They actually moved up from Mississippi. My dad worked for Chrysler, the factory. So we kind of grew up that middle income area. We've had our food stamps. We've had the welfare. We've done all that. I was a product of the Detroit public school system.
Mm.
I played little league football. Love. I played for the Northwest Detroit Cougars. Love football. And so eventually I grew to be about 6'7" at 13, 14 years old.
That's
So
crazy,
and you can
man.
imagine, I know it's crazy, right? But can you imagine football being a little difficult when you're 6'7", you're 13, 14, and you're a wide receiver.
Mm.
So they tell you to do a down and out and turn. They throw the ball way up in there. You go catch it. And the little guys, the defensive backs, the linebackers, are like short, stocky. They're like 5'1", 200 pounds. And they starting to hit you pretty hard. So I quickly learned that football was fun, but it wasn't for me.
Was it for
It
you?
wasn't for me. And so I started just kind of playing basketball in the park. And basketball came pretty easy. I was in the eighth grade. I remember playing at Bobian Middle School.
Mm.
And I was in the park playing, and I was dunking the
At
basketball
eighth grade?
at eighth grade. I
Man.
couldn't palm it, but what I could do is jump high enough to just push it
Mm.
through the rim. And my neighbor was driving by, and he saw me, and he was like, they used to call me a long drink of water and things like that. They said, long drink of water, how old are you? I was like, oh, I'm 13. And he was like, you're dunking that? I was like, yeah, it's just, just for fun. I don't like basketball. Basketball is for softies, and I'm a football player. So long story short, he eventually said, you really need to start thinking about basketball. I did. I started thinking about it. It just came really easy. I was gifted. It just came easy for me.
Mm.
So eventually he introduced me to a coach at St. Martin de Porres High School, which is a private school on the other side of town,
Mm.
which, as you know, private schools cost money.
Yeah.
And so they came to my mom and dad. They said, we want Benjamin to come to St. Martin de Porres High School on the other side of town. But my mom and dad were like, well, that was cool, but he's going to Mumford High School. That's the public high school in the area that his brothers and sisters went. And we can't afford, it was like $1,000 a year to go to school when he can go here for free. And lo and behold, they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give him a scholarship.
Mm.
He could come across town. We're going to assign him a senior. His name was Derek Plummer. He had a car. We're going to assign him a senior that's going to pick him up in the morning and at 14 years old, drive him to school. We're going to pay for his gym shoes, his books, and his tuition.
Mm.
And we're going to put him on the varsity with the juniors and seniors. So I'm 14 years old, 6'7", 100 pounds soaking wet.
Oof.
And they put me on with the juniors and seniors that's getting ready to go to college. I eventually took the starting position from a senior. And before my freshman year was over, I was the starting center at St. Martin de Porres High School.
Man, so talk about that, just being able to go from that public school to that private school. How different was it?
Oh,
And
I mean, it was extremely different because if you don't think about a typical public school, it's a large school, it's
mm.
big, a bunch of kids. The classrooms are crowded, and the teacher's trying to manage all these kids. In a private school, it's a small setting. It's a teacher with maybe 10 or 12 students,
Mm.
and you're looking around, and everybody is focused and reading, and they're studying, and they're disciplined. But it was an all African American school. It was a small black school. The nuns and the priests were predominantly white, but the school was focused on getting this small group of African American athletes, because most of us was athletes. The
Mm.
football team won the state championship. The girls won the state championship. One of the girls went on to the WNBA. A couple of my teammates went on to the NBA. We were winning state championships and city championships in baseball and football. So it's an athletic school, and I didn't know it existed. They found me.
Mm.
But they were all geared toward going to Division I and Division II schools, colleges, and getting their grades. It was a requirement for us to maintain a certain GPA so that we could, get our degrees eventually and, of course, play sports. So the whole experience was just unbelievable for me because it opened my eyes that there was something a little bit greater than what I was experiencing through kindergarten to the eighth grade on the northwest side of Detroit.
Mm.
They took me on the other side of Detroit. Although the other side was a little rougher, I was kind of treated with kid gloves because I was an athlete, and they said I had this potential to, to play Division I ball and maybe greater. So I was kind of treated special, but the opportunities started to open up with basketball camps, colleges, University of Michigan, Michigan State, UCLA, Stanford, California. These schools started sending me letters
Mm.
from the ninth grade to the 10th grade. So here I am, a sophomore in high school, and the prospects of actually going to college and going to these basketball camps were real. Now, I couldn't afford to go, but I got invitations to go free
Mm.
to basketball camps throughout the country. So here I am now 15, turning 16, and I'm playing with the Indiana All Stars, the New York All Stars, the Wisconsin, the California All Stars. I'm going to these camps around the United States, and I'm beginning to see that there's not just a world outside of where I'm growing up. There's a world outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Mm.
And I'm starting to meet young men and coaches and just getting real life experiences that there is a life for a young black student athlete beyond Detroit. So it opened my eyes to me wanting to learn and do and experience more. And it was transformational, if you will, just going to that Catholic school.
Man, so that was just a product of networking and then the change of environment and those things. I don't think a lot of African American children get those type of opportunities, and I was blessed to get those opportunities with a guy named Pastor T.D. Hicks. Shout out Pastor T.D. Hicks, and
Mm.
if I didn't get those opportunities from him, I don't know if I'll be here right now. So, did you ever get any offers from any of those big D1 schools or?
Oh, yeah, I got over 100 offers
Dang.
from 100 top universities
Mm.
across the United States.
Woo.
At that time in 1984, so like 100 years ago, when I graduated high school, the rules were that you can only visit your top 5 schools
Mm.
that could pay you to come. Now you can go visit 100 schools, but out of your own pocket. But you could visit 5 top schools. So I visited 5 top Division I schools: Wake Forest,
Mm.
University of Michigan,
Woo.
Michigan State. I visited Oregon State University in Oregon, Illinois State University in Illinois. I visited 5 universities, but I had over 100 4-time scholarships to go to any school. That Harvard, I wish I would have considered Harvard
Mm.
and got that education. So they were Ivy League schools. They were Stanford, UCLA, um, Duke,
Woo.
all the top schools in the United States. I was able to get invitations and full scholarship offers. So it was a really
It's
it
a
was a
blessing.
blessing. It was.
I think I'll give you buckets,
And
but we might have to go hoop sometime.
we had to check that. And I even got one letter from the Seattle Supersonics,
Mm.
the NBA team, that they were watching me in high school.
That's crazy,
It is
man.
crazy. It is really
So,
crazy.
where'd you end up deciding to go to college at?
Well, I ultimately played at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida.
Mm.
I played down there. I had some injuries, unfortunately, which set back my career, but I was able to make honorable mention All American. I was one of the top leading scorers in the state before I got injured. I thought I was going to get drafted. It was looking pretty good until the injuries kicked in. So I wound up finishing my degree in 4 years. I got my degree in political science. I had really good coaches, really good teachers, really good mentors that said, just in case you might not make it to the NBA,
Mm.
you need to have a college degree, something good to fall back on. So I got my degree in political science. I didn't get drafted, but had an opportunity to get an agent that said, hey, listen, how about you play in the European League? Go over there, rehabilitate your knee, and then see if we can get you back over here as a free agent. A couple of teams, the Orlando Magic, a couple of teams were looking at me potentially as a free agent.
Mm.
If I can go over to Europe, build my knees back up, and build my statistics. So I went over to Munich, Germany, which was another life-changing experience. So now I'm not in Detroit. I'm not even in the United States. In another galaxy in my mind.
Mm.
And I'm over in Munich, Germany. I don't speak German, so I had a translator on the team. There was one American on each team. And I was traveling throughout Europe playing professional basketball
Man,
at 18 years old.
at 18 years old. So, how long did you end up staying in the league, in the European league?
Unfortunately, I was only able to play one season because of my
Mm.
injuries. I just could never recover from the knee injuries, and I had a broken ankle. My ankle was never the same. I had it taped up. I had an air cast on it, a gel cast on it, but I could never make those sharp cuts that basketball players need to make. And my knees could never sustain a full 4 quarters of just the pounding on the basketball court.
Man,
So
that's unfortunate. But
only one season.
Talk about the experience in being in Germany, some of the things you've seen, some things you liked, some things you didn't like.
It was a great. I didn't like not being able to understand all the conversations,
Mm,
but of course, basketball was kind of a universal language. You know, when the cursing you out, yelling at you,
mm,
block out, rebound, in any language, you kind of can understand that. But just meeting the guys, traveling, the different food. I was over there doing Oktoberfest. I'm not a big beer drinker, but it was beers that we was drinking, tall pitchers of beer. Um, just meeting the people, the way they treated you like a celebrity, the respect. There was no real, there seemed to be no real racial tensions.
mm,
That I was, the German people that I met and dealt with and played basketball with, they met me with open arms, and it was a really good experience. Traveling to Yugoslavia, Hungary, trying the different foods, staying in different hotels. I mean, you're just a kid. You're just leaving Detroit, Michigan.
mm.
You see these places on a globe or a map, but it's almost surreal to actually go there and walk into the arena and signing autographs and the kids wanting to talk to you. It was definitely enlightening and eye opening. Unfortunately, the flip side of that was the sadness and the depression and the potential being lost for 2 or 3 years
Mm.
and just the thoughts of suicide, not knowing at 21 years old, what am I going to do now? I'm a kid. I have a college degree, but I was expecting this to last another 5, 10 years at least.
Mm.
And playing the NBA. So the dark side of that was you focused on it so much. It was your entire life. I'm about 14 years old, and you didn't really prepare to do anything else. But thank God, again, I did get my degree. But it was very, very difficult for me to transition from not living the life of a basketball player to having to become, I guess, and live a normal life.
Mm.
And it was very emotionally tough. It was probably one of the darkest times of my life.
Man, so we'll get back into that,
Okay.
but let's clarify. So, were you studying in Germany, or you got your degree and then you went to Germany?
Yeah, I got my degree from the University of Central Florida in political science.
Mm,
I graduated, unlike most athletes, we don't finish in exactly 4 years getting your bachelor's because you're on the road, you're traveling, you're playing ball, and it's very demanding. When you're not traveling in this off season, you're weight training
mm,
or you're doing something to prepare for the upcoming season. So it's never ending. So I had to go to summer school. I had to take different courses. I even went back home to Wayne State University one summer and took courses. So I was determined to get my bachelor's degree in exactly 4 years.
mm.
And so once I finished and graduated college with my bachelor's degree, that's when the opportunities open up for you to go pro, at least for me. Obviously, you don't have to. Today's age kids are coming out of high school and then
Man,
maybe 1 year of college and then they going pro. I was not that gifted of an athlete. I did use all 4 years to hone my profession as a basketball player, but I also used those 4 years to get my degree. So I graduated in 4 years, finished my basketball eligibility in 4 years, and then that's when I went overseas to play because I didn't get drafted to play over here in the NBA.
man, that's crazy. Yeah, like you said, they got a pro league now. It's called OTE, where
Mm.
they're sending age students to
Yeah,
play pro, and they
right.
can go to either the G League, get drafted right out
Right.
of high school. That's crazy. They got some freak athletes over
It
there.
is. It is great, but that's really new. That wasn't around when I was coming out. It was either high school, pro. It was only a couple of people. I think a couple of people may have done that, but mostly it was high school, then college,
Mm.
and overseas, and then a shot for the NBA.
Man, so you said you finished that first season, and then you kind of got into a dark place. Let's talk about that. What really had you down? And you said focusing on basketball so much, and
Right.
then not have nothing to do. So how'd you navigate through
It,
that?
it was it was I guess a lot of prayers. My mom and dad was my girlfriend at the time who I married. Um, she was very supportive, but my mom and dad, my upbringing, my training, my mentors, they were like, "Listen, you're an intelligent young man. You managed to get a degree in 4 years in political science. You can read and write. You know, unfortunately, basketball is over. You're 21, 22 years old. You're black. You're 6'8". But apparently, God has something else for you to do.
Mm.
And so, it's that village. It's that network. It's that the people that I had around me, supporting me, that helped me kind of get through it, and to realize that I did have a degree. I had an education, and what did I want to do with that? And me, of all things, wanted to be a lawyer. And people were like, that's not what we do. I mean, you don't come from where you come from and then playing basketball and do all that you've done and then get the grades that you got. Because, when you're traveling all the time, and I took the courses that the average normal student took to get a degree. I didn't take, the less difficult courses just to stay eligible for basketball. So I took the courses, and I sat down with a counselor, and I took the courses to put me online to get a degree, not to just stay eligible for basketball.
Mm.
Because at the end of 4 years, I didn't want to go back home with 130 credits that didn't parlay or convert into a degree. So I took the courses that I needed to take to get my degree. And so it was challenging at the end of that, because I got C's. I was a C plus student at best. I got a B in here and there. So for me wanting to become a lawyer, getting to law school, I had none of the qualifications. Academically, I wasn't even close.
Mm.
So no one was really encouraging me to do that. They would say you can get a job, you can go to the military, there's certain things you can do because you had a degree.
Mm.
But being the personality that I have and the person that I am, when I'm told I can't do something,
It just make us want to go do
it's
it.
just the freaking opposite. Now it's time to go and do it and
Man,
shut up all the haters and the
man, got to prove
naysayers.
everybody wrong,
You got
man.
to. Or at least you got to die trying, right?
Man, so getting out of college and not really knowing where to go, how did you take that step towards becoming a lawyer?
I sat down with my counselor at college,
Mm.
nice white lady, and they basically said, "Listen, we'll help you try, but you're probably not going to go the course that you're trying to go. But the
Mm.
good thing is you got your college degree. So we have something called a law fair day. It's a fair day where all the law schools come in and they set up their different booths. It's like a career day, a law day. It's a big fair. So I suggest you go attend that, check out the different law schools that you might want to go, check out their criteria. The LSAT is the law school admissions test, what the criteria, the LSAT and the GPA, and then combine and see if you can get into law school. But when you go see those numbers,
Mm.
understand the reality is you're not getting in.
That's what they told you?
That's what my counselors told me.
Man, so they tried to push their reality onto you. So how did you face that adversity and just get through that? And like, how did that fair day go?
It was tough because I went to all these different booths. First of all, there wasn't a lot of blacks there,
Mm.
and then the people behind the booths were not black. The people representing their different law schools. So you would go up there, you get a brochure, you're like, oh, University of Florida, Florida State, because I kind of wanted to stay in Florida.
Mm.
University of Florida, Florida State. I checked out a couple of HBCUs, and I'm looking at 3.5. Ouch. 3.2. Oh, 3.7. I saw no 2 point nothings. So I'm thinking about what my counselor said. I'm like, damn, so you can't get into law school with a C?
Mm.
What about us C students? What do we do?
Mm.
So I'm tripping. And then they said the LSAT. And they look at the LSAT scores. I'm like, well, so what's the LSAT? So law school admissions test, you got to score these astronomical scores for the LSAT. And they give you the average score for African Americans and the average score for the white kids and the GPA. When you combine them two together,
Mm.
this is your percentage of getting into law school. And I'm like, well, damn, that's why everybody told me to don't even go that route,
Mm.
because the numbers just don't match. That's not what I'm supposed to do.
So hearing that and then going through that fair day, what'd you do when you went home?
Depressed, discouraged, but determined now.
Mm.
I'm not going to say what I said, the F-bombs everywhere. Determined, okay, well, I got to do what I got to do because I'm me.
Mm.
I just got to go and do what I got to do. Nothing's going to stop me. I go around it, underneath it, over it, or through it. Now I'm really going to law school. Watch me. So I applied to 9 law schools. Florida, Florida State, couple schools, Duke, I think, Michigan, New York, and they were like, "Psh, no, rejection, Psh, no." And I'm back here. I'm 6'8", with my political science degree. I got a management position
Mm.
training with Burger King of all people.
Man.
So you imagine me back there ducking and cooking fries and flipping burgers and making shakes. And so I'm a Burger King management program, making $29,000 a year.
Man.
And I'm thinking I'm doing well. And so while I'm doing that, basketball career is over. So I cut up all my gym shoes. I threw away all my basketball gear, and I couldn't go to the park. I couldn't watch NBA. I couldn't do anything related to basketball for 2 or 3 years. It was just way too depressing.
Mm.
So I didn't touch a basketball because every time I touched the ball as a kid and a young adult, it was, toward being in the NBA. So once I parlayed through that and pivoted through that, I had to leave it alone and focus on that dream is over.
Mm.
And it was seriously a dream because I continued to dream about it for years and years and years later. And I would wake up from my dream sort of depressed because I would realize that was a dream.
Mm. And it
Reality,
felt so
so
real.
real. In reality, I got to get up and go to Burger King.
Man.
I got to make Whoppers.
Home of the
This
Whopper.
is crazy, right?
Man.
So I'm in there making so I applied to 9 law schools. I got no, disqualified. So I got 8 no's.
Mm.
And then I was in there one day flipping burgers, going through things as the manager. And I got a letter from a school called Toro Law Center, a Jewish law school in Long Island, New York.
Mm.
And they said, Benjamin Morton, you're not qualified to come to the law school. However, we'd like to meet with you personally, and there may be a contingency that we might allow you to go to law school. And
Mm.
that's all I need. It wasn't a rejection, nor was it an admission to get in,
It was
but
an
it was
opportunity.
an opportunity to potentially get into law school.
Mm.
You know what I did?
You went down there.
I called Burger King in Long Island, New York, and said, "Hey, I'm a manager at Burger King in Orlando, Florida. I'm moving."
Mm.
Not coming up there temporarily. I'm moving to Long Island, New York, Amityville Burger King. Can I transition up there and work for you as I go to law school? And they were like, "Sure, come on up." So I packed up my car, my hoopty, my clothes, what little belongings I had, drove to New York, moved in, got me a room, got the job at Burger King, and Toro said, "So here's what you need to do. You need to take a writing course because you can't write worth jack." I said, "But I got a college degree." "Listen, you can't write. Well, definitely like a lawyer.
Mm.
And so we want you to take these 2 or 3 classes. If you pass these classes in the summer, then we'll let you in law school, but we really gonna have to monitor you closely because we don't think you're gonna make it."
Man. Did that like discourage you, or it lit a fire under you after they told you they don't think you were gonna make it, and hearing 8 no's, but you got that one opportunity? So how did that make you feel? It make you discouraged, or did it make it like it lit a fire under you?
The fire that it lit under me could burn a forest down.
Mm.
It was nothing but fire because all I needed was the crack in the armor. All I needed was one little opportunity, and they gave me that. So I moved up there. I worked for Burger King. I studied all summer. I couldn't afford to live anywhere but a crack house in Queens.
Mm.
So I lived in a crack house in Queens. And of course, the guy who was selling the crack was like, "Okay, we'll give you a discount, but you got to drive me around while I
Man.
do my deliveries." So I'm like, "So wait a minute. So what if I get put over with you in my car?"
Mm.
And he was like, "Well, you just tell the cops that you're just helping me." I'm a kid. I'm like, "Okay." So I'm in the crack house. I'm driving this crack dealer around
Man.
so I could have a place to live. I'm working at Burger King, and I'm taking these classes these law classes. Eventually, I was able to get out of the crack house, stop helping this guy. Eventually, I was able to get me a little studio apartment. I took those classes. Somehow, I passed all 3 of the classes,
Mm.
and they said, "Welcome. You're going to start law school in the fall. You made it."
So we gotta slow that down. That's a crazy story, man. So how you get involved with a crack dealer driving a crack dealer around?
I am trying to I'm living in a little cheap hotel,
Mm.
and it's costing me. And And Burger King is delayed. I got an interview. I go to things, and then you got to work 2 weeks or 4 weeks before you get your first check. And I'm coming up from Orlando. I'm struggling, and I need a place to live. I can only sleep in my car for so long. I'm
Mm.
6'8". It's hard to get up
Man,
and run into a bathroom in a gas station and brush your teeth, change clothes, jump in your car and drive to Burger King,
mm.
flip some burgers, and then leave there and go to school and study. It's hard.
It's a grind, man.
It's a
That's
grind. It's
crazy.
crazy.
So most people don't understand that the type of work you got to really put in to be successful, and I feel like that is something that I ended up struggling with here recently because being in my generation, we see a lot of people that are successful online, and there's a lot of people that do find success very quickly. But some of the people, most of the people that are successful online, they've been grinding for about 5, 10 years,
Easy.
and we don't see
You
that.
don't see the grind, and that's okay. You don't need to see the grind. It's none of your business, right?
Mm,
But understand there's grind behind even the superstars. Michael Jordan had to grind. LeBron James had to grind. It's a different kind of grind.
mm,
Rappers, singers, politicians, lawyers, doctors, it's a grind. I think my grind was probably worse than most grinds. I don't know why. I'm learning now that the pivoting that I was doing was preparing me for something else
mm.
that I know and understand now. We can talk about that later, but all these was opportunities for me to pivot and grow and was preparing me for something else. They say the old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees. You can't see your forest because it's millions of trees. You don't know you're in the forest. You're just hitting trees and knocking yourself down and getting back up.
Mm.
But where I come from and the way I was raised and the way my mom and dad instilled things into me, you just don't quit. And if you do quit, there's no options.
Mm.
What do you do?
You can't lose if you don't quit.
Yeah,
All right.
you definitely can't win if you don't keep fighting and trying.
Mm.
Right?
So you said you were just brushing teeth in bathrooms and
Hustling, getting to Burger King, getting to school. Once they say I got in, I was able to get into a dorm
mm,
at school. It was a little studio apartment. So I was able to do that. I moved my younger brother to keep him out of trouble. I moved him into the studio with me and got him a job at the law school as a janitor. So together, he and I were surviving together through law school.
mm,
But what I ultimately had to do, law school was a 3-year program for a time. I ultimately, because Burger King was so demanding, they were like, well, your primary job is Burger King, and that's our concern, not law school. So I eventually had to quit Burger King
mm,
because law school was too demanding and Burger King was too demanding. And so I had to then shift to a part-time evening law student. So I went to law school Monday through Thursday,
mm,
6 at night to 9:30, 10 o'clock at night for 5 years.
mm.
And I had to get a full-time job working since I was in the law field now. I got jobs at different law firms where I could work from 9 to 5 as a paralegal because I was now learning the law.
Mm.
And so I was a little more advanced in the paralegal because I was a law student.
Mm.
Now, these law firms would never hire me as a lawyer because I was just never in their plateau of academics and education. They were the NYU's, Hofstra. My law school is a very small tiered law school, and it was not very prestigious at the time. So I was working in the morning, 9 to 5, whatever the lawyers needed me to do, filing papers, emptying the garbage cans, preparing the conference room for meetings, running papers over to the courthouse, doing whatever the lawyers needed me to do,
Mm.
and learning what kind of lawyers do on the ground level. Get out of school, get out of work at 5, and jump on the Long Island Railroad because some of the law schools, the law firms I worked with was in Manhattan, in New York.
Mm.
Jump on the Long Island Railroad, leave there, doing the work, studying, get to school by 6:30, run to class, jump in the back, and sit in the class and get my lectures and take my notes and do my thing for 5 years. So it took me 5 years to get a 3-year law degree.
That's crazy. All right, we got to finish that story about
Okay.
you getting involved with that crack dealer and driving around. So, you said you was working there, and it was what 4 weeks before you got your first check.
Yeah,
So,
it was a couple of weeks. First of all, Burger King told me I had a job. I
mm,
didn't have the job. Actually, when I got there, I had to interview, the
mm,
management, go through the process. I guess they thought, yeah, you could probably get it. It's a good opportunity. So I'm waiting, I'm interviewing. My little money I had saved was going and going and going and going. And so I'm interviewing, and then You know, you got to get with the management. They got to make the decisions, interview other people, and then they finally gave me the job. I got the job as assistant manager at Burger King in Amityville, New York, on Highway 110. It's probably still there.
Mm.
And then you have to work to get in the hole. They don't pay you. They don't give you an advance paycheck.
Mm.
You got to work for 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks to get the first paycheck for the first 2 weeks.
Man.
So I'm sitting there in a month. So I'm literally out of money. I'm homeless. I'm out of money.
Mm.
So a friend of a friend's friend's uncle's cousin's auntie knew a
Man.
guy.
Networking.
Yeah, negative networking, if you want to coin the phrase. So he said, "Yeah, you can crash on my couch. You can stay with me, but you have to earn your keep."
Mm.
Well, cool. I can hustle. I do that. So what I had to do? He said, "Well, I sell crack." I was like, "Okay, so that ruins my life right there. One crack sale, I'm done. I'm a drug dealer. I get a record." He said, "No, you ain't got to sell no drugs. I just need because I had an old white Caprice. It's like a Mustang. It's called a Caprice. So I had my little car, a little hoopty, and so he said, I don't have a car. I need you to drive me around to my clientele,
Mm.
and you can stay with me if you just drive me around." Like, oh, that's all I got to do. I don't have to sell it. No, you just drive me around.
Mm.
Oh, okay, I can do that for a couple weeks.
So how long did you stay with him?
About a month until I
About a
got my
month?
first paycheck. I'm like, I'm out.
He
dude.
said, "I'm not doing this no
I'm
more."
out. I
Man.
didn't get shot, mugged, arrested. I'm out. So
It's a blessing, man.
it more than a blessing, dude. I could be anywhere right now
Mm.
if some of those deals went sideways.
That's
Like on
crazy,
TV, right?
man. So you got your law degree. Took you 5 years. A 3-year course took you 5 years.
Right.
And then you're just grinding. And then how did you get to become a full-time lawyer?
Okay, so I'm grinding through law school. I'm struggling again, still with the C's. I got 2 A's in law school: contracts and litigation. I wanted to be a trial lawyer in a corporate law, and I wanted to do criminal defense too. But I got a D in criminal law, so I'm like, okay, I'll never be a good criminal lawyer. So I kind of put that dream aside. But so after you finish law school, you got to pass the bar exam to get a license to practice law. So
So do you? No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but do you need to pass the bar exam to be a paralegal?
no, that's
Okay.
just it. No, this is just for the paralegal school. It's different. You get a certification, and you can become a paralegal, which is going to be my backup. If law school tanked like I was told it was going to be, I was just going to be a paralegal, or I was going to be a police officer. I want to do something in law. If it gets a tall cop, I probably would get shot. Too easy. So I probably want to be a paralegal, but I kept being a police officer as an option. So yeah, so I had to pass the bar exam to be a practicing attorney. So I'm like, okay, dang, another freaking hurdle. So the bar exam is offered twice a year in February and in July, and it is the hardest freaking exam you can imagine. So there's a course that you can take, a bar prep course, and they take you through the whole bar exam, but they want like $1,500. I didn't have 15 cents, let alone 1,500, so I couldn't afford to take the bar prep course. So I'm just studying, getting books off the shelf, taking practice exams, teaching myself. And so bar exam time came around. I think I first took it in February. You needed like a 135 or something like that. For example, I got like a 129.
Man.
I failed it by like 4 points. Like, okay, depressed. All right, one time. Everybody doesn't pass the first time around. So my buddies was passing. They was going celebrating, drinking. I'm a lawyer now officially, Esquire. It was cool. So I said, okay, well, I'll study again, extra hard. I'll take it in July. So I took it again in July, and I got 132. And I needed a 133. And then the depression kicked in. I was like, wow, 1 point stopped me from becoming a lawyer.
Man.
And I was so discouraged at that point. So I'm studying again. So I'll take it again in February of the next year and see how I do. But I was just kind of broken at that point, and I fell down to a 127.
Man. So you took it
That was the third
Third
time. A year and a
time.
half later.
a year and a half.
Later, third, because it's only twice a year. So it was the second year, and I got like a 127. And I was like, this is just, I'm going to go through law school for 5 years. And now it's the second year for me taking a bar exam. So that's 7 years. And I'm still not a lawyer. It's
Man.
just, everybody was right. I took more than I can handle. It was not meant for me. And then I was applying to get in the United States Air Force.
Mm.
And I met with the Air Force guy. I applied, and they basically told me my grades was too low in law school. My grades was too low in college. But I convinced them to sit down and interview with me. When I sit down and interview with them, the colonel was very impressed because he wanted to talk to me about my NBA life and my career as a basketball player and my goals to get into the NBA. And at that point, Michael Jordan had left the Chicago Bulls. He retired, came back, and he was playing in Washington.
Mm.
So I saw this old guy, this old white colonel was more interested in basketball than me coming in the Air Force as a military lawyer. So
Mm.
I quickly kept the whole conversation on basketball.
Mm.
And by the end of the conversation, he was like, okay, son, you're in. We're going to let you into the United States Air Force
Mm.
as a military lawyer. But you got to pass the bar exam first. And I was like, oh, snap.
Mm.
So I went through all those times of studying and trying to pass the bar exam. The fourth time I sat down to take it, the Air Force called me.
Mm.
They was like, okay, Mr. Morton, it's been a year and a half, it's been 3 times. We've held your position in the Air Force as a military lawyer. We can't hold it anymore.
Mm.
One more shot. If you fail this time, you can't become an Air Force lawyer.
So that's that was your fourth time taking it, or this was
I had taken it 3,
Mm.
and I was getting ready to take it the fourth time when they told me this is, because that would be 2 years. It's over twice a year. First year, 2 times, I failed both. Second year, I failed the third time, and the fourth time was coming up. And they said that was my final time. If I didn't pass it this time, that I would have to reapply, which I probably wouldn't get
Mm.
because I think I was like 32 years old. You have to be a military lawyer by 33,
Mm.
or you age out for whatever reason. Um, so they said this is now or never. So I shut down because I was working part time, needed to make a little bit of money as a paralegal, and actually I was working full time, I think it was, and I was studying for the bar exam at night, and I was living in Newark, New Jersey at the time. And so I had to make a decision that I had to own my failures, had to own my life, who I am, where I am, and I needed to pass the exam no matter what. So I shut down everything. I moved into the YMCA,
Mm.
which is definitely in the straight up downtown Newark. And so I had to get the duct tape so I could duct tape my vents to keep the rats and the roaches out
At the YMCA?
at the YMCA.
Man, that's
So we
crazy.
had to duct tape the vents, and I had to quit my job and lived off unemployment. I had to do nothing but from 9 to 5, wake up in the morning and go. I would go across the street to Seton Hall Law School
Mm.
or Rutgers Law School, get me a booth, kind of like where we are now, shut the blinds, and do nothing but study law
Mm.
day in and day out for 3 months. Took the bar exam for the fourth time in July.
Man, 2 years later.
And man, did I pass that exam.
That's crazy,
And did I
man.
cry like a baby. I scored high enough that I passed the New Jersey bar exam, one of the top scores. And my score was so high that I was able to use that score to apply for Washington, D.C.
Mm.
Without having to take their exam. I still had to do the paperwork, but my score was high enough that I was able to waive it into Washington, D.C. and apply for the license there. I never finished that process, but I qualified. Then the Air Force was like, boom, welcome to the United States Air Force as a military lawyer.
Mm. So did they make you go through like basic training or anything?
That's my next step. So I had to then pack up, move out of the YMCA. I was sworn in December 23rd, 1997. I was sworn in as a lawyer. 2 weeks later, January 4th, 2 days after my birthday, which is January 2nd, I was on an airplane to Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama for JAG school training for 3 months.
Man, so let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
Man, so just talk about that grind and that and like going through all those struggles and then eventually getting your dreams. So most people think they'll get their dreams in maybe 5 years, but it took you 7 years. It took you becoming homeless. It took you living in a YMCA and
Don't forget
like,
the crackhead.
man, that's crazy. So like, just talk about those feelings and then what kept you so motivated to keep going. What like was it wanting to prove people wrong, or what just kept you motivated to keep going?
You know, that's a good question. I can't pinpoint any one thing, But I will say I was raised very well by McClinton Morton and Ellery Morton with no education. And my biblical foundation and my faith and my training from my mom and dad was the roots of everything that I relied on primarily. I would always go back, read my Bible, study my scriptures, pray and fast, and just ask. Because one of the things that I always believe was God said He will never leave you or nor forsake you. He would not take you this far to leave you.
Mm.
And although I felt left by Him many times, I would continue and continue and reach out to my mom and dad and tell them I'm giving up, I'm crying, I'm coming home. My dad was like, "You're not coming to this house.
Mm.
You're a grown man." And my mom was like, "Your dad said you can't come home. You just got to keep trying. You got to try again."
Man.
And so, because they raised 9 kids, they were tired. I was 8 of 9, and my youngest brother was gone. So, they were finally had an empty nest. And he let my sisters come home once or twice, but he would never let any of his sons come back home to live. And so I knew that I would either succeed or I would literally die in the streets trying. I
Mm.
had no other options. So I just kept trying. I just kept reaching deep and trying. I was very depressed and sad. I remember after I felt the third time, I remember punching the mirror and shattering glass everywhere, just sitting on the floor crying like, God, so you didn't let me go to the NBA. Now you let me get this far in law. I'm trying. What are you doing to me? Why are you doing this to me?
Mm.
I have nothing else to live for, nothing to do, nothing else that I want to do. So I'm starting to think of other things, paralegal, cop, things that I wouldn't be happy. So I'm just going to live a normal life, sad, depressed, making enough money to pay my bills till I get old enough to retire and die. So I was trying to start to sort of dummy down my dreams and expectations.
Mm.
But there was a part of me that says, get back up, lace up your boots, get refocused and go out and try again.
Mm.
And so when the Air Force told me I got one final time, I said, well, let me just do everything that I can, stop working. Like I saw the other kids, they were working. They were taking one exam. By the way, I was taking New York and New Jersey. I
Mm.
was taking 2 exams because the way they structure New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, since they, like the tri-state area, they have a special way where you can take the exam for one state and then the second exam for the other state, but they use part of the score from that state. So I was taking 2 exams and working.
Mm.
So I said, well, maybe I need to just revisit my plan and restructure it. So let me stop working, just go broke, moving to Y, and let me take one exam.
Mm.
Let me just focus on New Jersey because this is where I'm living. And so I didn't take New York, I just took New Jersey, and I just focused on that. And I worked hard, I prayed, and I believe I was blessed. I passed it.
So you mentioned they had a prep school for the bar exam. Do you think if you were able to come up with that $1,500 and had a mentor and a just something that would have been able to guide you through it, you would have passed it for maybe the first few times?
I probably would have passed it probably the second or third time.
So having a mentor and having someone with a little bit more knowledge is more important. So
Clearly.
you think that $1,500 would have been,
I think
it
it
would
would
have
have been a good
saved you
investment.
2 years?
I mean, I'm guessing, I'm speculating, but having been through that system now and talking to kids that's going through it, it would have definitely made a difference. How quickly, I can't say for sure, but it would have given me an opportunity, increase my chances of passing sooner.
Man,
Definitely.
so the reason why I mentioned that is because in our generation, there's a lot of influencers. They post and they got a lot of courses and mentorships, and some of them are fluff, but some of them
Right.
can really help
Right.
people expedite. I mean, help them speed up that process
Right.
of reaching success. So, do you think having a mentor or having courses to help you stay in those lines would have been important to you if and it would have helped you?
I would say 100%, and it's a must, and it's why I personally try to do that now. There's law students that I work with. I've written 2 books in the law, the Federal Rules of Evidence and Criminal Procedure. I've created basically a training course to teach law students how to write and how to pass the bar exam the first time. Because I went on and I passed Florida and I passed Maryland. I know now how to pass the bar exam the first time. and I know how to teach students, especially African American students that's struggling, that doesn't have that exposure. So yes, I mentor them. I teach them how to write like lawyers, how to read, how to study, how to spot issues, what to look for, and mentor them, because that's what I missed out on. But I realize now it was part of my journey, and it's a great opportunity for me to give back for young students that are trying to go through law school, trying to get through, and they're struggling with the bar exam. Because I have a method. I know that I know that I know. I know how to do it now.
So you think all those difficulties and all that adversity you had to face, it just made you stronger and made you the person who you are today?
It's clearly made me stronger, made me the person I am today, and it has given me a gift of something that I've created, a think tank that I've created now called the Power of the Positive Pivot.
Mm,
And I use, when I look back on the methodology of the pivot that I've created, is what I've used my entire life and didn't realize I was using it. So now I was able to capture that and actually create a think tank and put it in a real life 5-step methodology. That is the reason why I'm here in
mm,
Kansas sitting down talking to you, because I'm now teaching people and showing people and speaking with people about how to do that. And myself is the living example. And it's a method that I use real quick. The P is for positive. You approach every situation that you find yourself in first with a powerful but a positive approach.
mm,
The I is issue. As attorneys, we're taught to identify issues. Oftentimes, we're dealing with the wrong issue in our lives. So we have to spot the right issue, and then you have to frame that issue in such a way that it's more beneficial to you. So the I is issue spotting. Then the V in pivot is visualization. One time I went into the auditorium where the bar exam was taken. I sat down in a seat and I visualized myself taking, writing, and passing that exam.
mm,
And it was in Metuchen, New Jersey, the fourth time, and that's when I passed. So visualization is taking the intangible, visualizing yourself being successful, and then parlaying that into some actual tangible effort and making it. The O is probably most difficult in pivot. It's owning, it's ownership. I didn't pass the bar exam and didn't do things like getting to the Air Force until I owned just who in the hell I am. I'm black, I'm 6'8". Basketball is over. I'm
mm,
not the smartest kid in the world. I'm a C student. I struggled. I didn't write well. I didn't read well. I couldn't do math. I owned who I am and what I am and say, okay, now from that ownership, I'm going to build on that. And I'm going to own my failures and my successes. I'm not going to let anybody write my story. They're not going to write my narrative. It's my story to tell. I'm going to write it. And in telling my story, it's okay to tell that I was suicidal, I was depressed, I was sad, I failed it, because it is my story to tell.
mm,
And so I owned all of that. And not until that I owned all of that and knew who I was, that I was able to pivot into these things,
mm,
in these areas of success. And then triumph is the T. It's triumphant. That is not outcome determinative. Your triumph, your success, it is in the journey. It was my journey and all those failures that
mm,
I thought I was failing that was ultimately making me, those little victories. What I thought was obstacles, those were little opportunities for me to grow, get better, get stronger, and ultimately become a lawyer,
mm,
and a military lawyer, a corporate lawyer, traveled the world doing the things that I thought I could never do, because I was able to pivot in all these different areas. When I thought I was failing, I was actually growing and pivoting. So
mm,
all that is culminated now to think tank that I do. I was in Africa speaking. I'm here working with my man. And what I do now is corporate consulting, and build my think tank and go around talking to people about the power of the positive pivot.
mm.
So it's ultimately what I think God was preparing me for. And here I sit talking to you about it. And we just met yesterday.
Man, that's crazy, man. It's
It is
the
crazy.
power of networking is crazy.
It is.
So, is it Pivot or Pivotology is the brand?
It's the power of the positive pivot. The pivot is the Pivot.
Mm,
Pivotology is a word like psychology and sociology. If you go to the website, check it out. I have defined the word pivotology,
mm,
and I have defined the word pivotologist, because someone that has mastered the art of pivoting has mastered the art of pivotology is a pivotologist.
Mm.
So these are things that I've created that will be in your Webster Dictionary. It'll be on Google soon.
Mm.
It's a study that I've created, and I believe it's a study of because it's transformational from the heart. So I believe it's trifold. It's what I call the human trilogy. The first part of the pivotologist is to understand and study and understand the heart, because the heart is where things are ultimately conceived. The Bible talks about to know a man is to know a man's heart.
Mm.
So if you can condition your heart to conceive something first in your heart, it's real, it's solid. Can't nobody mess with your heart. And then from the heart goes the mind. And the mind is then where it is believed. So if the heart can conceive it, then the mind can believe what the heart is conceived. Now the body then reacts and achieves it. Conceive, believe, and achieve. That's the manifestation of the actual functioning of doing what the heart is conceived and the mind is believed. So I
Mm.
call that the human trilogy. Like the spiritual trilogy is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
So the human trilogy is your mind, is your heart, your mind, and your body actually doing it. So I created the whole pivotology and the pivotologist from that. And that's the roots of it. And again, that's because that's how I live my life. You ask me, how did I do these things?
Mm.
Other than the spirit and the faith behind me, I probably would have never, ever, ever done it. Because most of the people that look like me where I come from, they don't do this. And people ask me, well, how did you become a lawyer? You don't have time for me to tell the story. You probably wouldn't believe it. But it's been a lot.
Mm. So do you have that pivotology, and all those things trademarked?
It's all trademark. It's copywritten. I'm a lawyer. I
You,
make
he
sure
said
everything's
he know
protected.
what he doing, baby.
No, everything is set up. It's on my website, thepowerofthepositivepivot.com.
Mm.
And it's a think tank. I've created a corporation. It's called Triple P, and it's a think tank. And what I do is I go in the think tank. I put you in my think tank. We're in the think tank now, and you don't even know it.
Mm.
You think you're creating a podcast for me. I got you in my think tank. And we're talking. We're experimenting. We're putting down ideas and thoughts. And one of my phrases that I coined, that I trademark, is it's a think tank with results. Because unlike most think tanks that write articles and distribute pamphlets and stuff, I'm a think tank, and my corporation is a think tank that goes out and actually make real world differences, which is why I'm here in Kansas right now with you. Because we're going to be working on some things with the suicide prevention and some things that we're going to be doing here in Kansas. So this is my think tank and my pivot in action. I'm pivoting right now as I sit here with you.
Mm.
So it's real.
So for the viewers that don't know what a think tank is, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that means.
Okay.
So go ahead and break that down
A think
for
tank
us.
is generally a nonprofit entity of a bunch of scholarly, smart people that come up with great ideas, and they do things, but it's usually a written document or a paper, and they put out policies and ideas and suggestions and recommendations how to make a particular area or a topic better.
Mm.
They don't necessarily, that I'm aware of, go out on the front lines and do the groundwork. They're the PhDs, the doctors, the people that I wasn't probably qualified to sit next to when I was growing up academically. But they're taught to be the academic elites, and they tell you, this is what you need to go do, and this is how you need to go do it. My thought process is, okay, the think tank is good. I like thinking. I like exploring. You're a thinker. You like asking the questions. In law school, they teach you critical thinking.
Mm.
No one tells you something, and it is that way because they told you so. You examine it, and you make your own independent determination. Is it that way, or is it different? Is it
Mm.
better? Is it worse? So you take that critical thinking, and for me, that's what think tanks do. They're critically thinking, they examine, they're exploring, and they're questioning. And then they take it to the next step, which is actual activism, doing things, making a difference, getting on the ground, networking, talking to people, coming up with things to actually become what's conceived and what's believed to actually being achieved. And that's why I think what the think tanks maybe stop at the conceiving and the believing, and they try to tend to give the achieving to others.
Mm.
And I believe think tanks, at least mine, we're going to next step. We're getting into the communities. We're getting into Africa. We're going over the world. We're going anywhere and everywhere to actually put boots to the ground and actually make a difference.
Mm. So let's resume your lawyer journey. You were sworn in. How was basic training?
It was a cakewalk. After living in my car, driving the crackhead around, I'm in the United States Air Force, Maxwell Air Force Base, Montgomery, Alabama.
Mm,
I'm a lieutenant. I'm an officer. You come in as a second, no, as a first lieutenant to go silver bar.
mm,
People saluting you when you're walking by. I mean, you're the shit. You're all right. You're a
mm,
lawyer. You're an officer in the United States Air Force, which people see the Air Force as the smartest academic branch of all the branches. Like, oh my God, you're in the Army, the Navy, and Marines. You're in the Air Force. So it's these plush hotel suites that we got as Air Force lieutenants.
mm,
And we go through these classrooms. Everything is neat and clean, auditoriums, and you're learning to be a JAG, a Judge Advocate General. You're
mm,
learning the UCMJ, the United States Code of Military Justice. You're doing mock trials. The colonels, these old lawyers that have been through the military, are teaching you. And then you're doing mock trials, and you're studying military law. So you're getting the whole transition from being a civilian lawyer to being a military lawyer.
mm.
And you do the training for 3 months. It was a dream come true.
Man, so talk about your first case. You probably can't disclose a lot of information on
Hmm.
it, but just talk about, actually being boots on the ground, defending, or were you prosecuting or defending?
Well, when you start out as an Air Force attorney, you go to the base level. My first base was Wright Pat Air Force Base. And it's like the base is like a city.
Mm,
And the commander of the base is usually a 1-star, 2-star general. He's like the mayor, and you're like on his staff. So you're not really giving cases. You can't, anything that comes to the door, you're doing legal opinions, you're giving out legal advice. Eventually, when you do that for the first 2 years as a baby lawyer, then you have the opportunity to become, if you want to do criminal defense, something called the Area Defense Counsel, where you represent people, or you can do other different opportunities. For me, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I wanted to become a trial lawyer and a corporate lawyer as part of something what I wanted to do in addition to criminal law. So
mm,
I applied as a young captain. I applied for the United States Air Force Contracts Litigation Team. Of course, I heard the same words again from the colonel. You don't qualify. You have to be a senior lawyer to represent the Air Force around the world in contracts litigation. This is corporate law. You
mm,
talk about Boeing, Martin Marietta's, Raytheon. You talk about the Air Force's money, billion-dollar weapon system contracts. We don't trust that with a young captain that been in the Air Force for 2 years. I said, okay, Colonel, sit down and talk with me.
mm.
Just let me come over and interview with you. And he was like, okay, come on over. So I sat down with the colonel, we interviewed, and he said, I'm going to give you a shot because you did so well at the base level. And so that's how I was able to start my career doing government contracts. I traveled the world litigating government contracts. But then when that ended, I did go overseas and I did international law in Korea. But when
Mm.
that ended, I ended up at Andrews Air Force Base in D.C. But I ultimately wanted my own practice in the Air Force. While I was in the Air Force, I was a federal special assistant federal prosecutor.
So you would prosecute, help
Either,
me
either,
understand.
either military people on the military base. Let's say if you was on a military base
Mm,
and you were a military member and you got into a fight, an assault, or you was on there selling drugs or something, you would get court-martialed.
mm,
And as a federal prosecutor, I would prosecute you in the military court.
okay.
Likewise, I was a special assistant United States attorney. So if you was a civilian and you came on the military base and you got into a fight or was selling drugs, you couldn't be court-martialed because you was not under the jurisdiction of the military.
Mm,
But you were on our base, which is a federal installation. So then I was a federal prosecutor. I would prosecute you in the federal district court in either Ohio or Maryland, depending on which base I was at.
mm.
So you are a federal prosecutor. So I can prosecute military individuals under the UCMJ in the military court or civilians in a federal court.
Mm.
So I was able to do both.
Powerful man right here.
I learned a lot. And I was able to parlay that, as I told you earlier, before we started. Your best criminal defense lawyers were prosecutors, because a prosecutor, you work with police and you learn how to develop and put together a case.
Mm.
And you work with the police, investigators, and you put together a case to prosecute. So I prosecuted a case. I won every case, mostly drug cases and fights and things like that on the base. So I won every case I prosecuted. But the good thing is, as a defense attorney, you know how, because you learned as a prosecutor how to put the case together.
You know how to break it down.
As a defense attorney, you know how to dismantle the case. that the prosecution has to put together.
Mhm.
So I was a defense attorney when I started my own law firm up in New Jersey for about 10 years.
So talk about that transition of getting out of the military and then starting your own law practice.
Oh my God, the transition was uncanny because now I made the determination on what cases I want, what I charged, the methodology, and the general litigation strategy of how I was going to defend the cases.
Mhm.
So I've had 5 homicides. I was able to win 3 where my clients were looking at life in prison.
Mhm.
And they wound up getting maybe 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, something like that. One of them got totally not guilty on all charges. He sat in jail for 3 years waiting on the trial. I had those 3 murder trials. I had attempted murders. I had a young lady who was charged with stabbing her pastor's wife while
Mhm.
she was holding a baby. Now the lady had psychological issues, so
Mhm.
she sat in jail for 7 years waiting to be prosecuted. She had several defense attorneys and several judges and several prosecutors. The case was assigned to me by the Bergen County Public Defender's Office. And in that case, it took me about a year and a half to get this young lady the treatment that she should have gotten.
Mhm.
And she wound up going to a mental institution and not spending 1 day in jail.
Mhm. That's crazy, man. So talk about the type of money you made in the military first. What'd you make in the military as a lawyer?
Okay, the military as a lieutenant, you come in for the first 6 months, you're a first lieutenant, you make, I don't know, maybe it's like 1,500, 1,800 a month, which
Mm.
was good money for me at the time. And then 6 months later, you're promoted to a captain. So I
Mm.
was a captain for my last 3 years in the Air Force. And the captain makes maybe 2,300. It was a couple $100 raise.
Mm.
So it was still between 80 and 90,000, I think, a year total.
Mm.
Then you get out of the military, and then that opportunity becomes when you have your own firm. You're able to kind of charge what you want. It's usually somewhere between 300 to 500 an hour
Woo.
as it turned out. Of course, all that doesn't go in your pocket because you got overhead, you got an office, you got a staff, you got a paralegal, you got an office manager. So all that doesn't go in your pocket. But on the average, as a private attorney, I would say I made between 200, 250,000 a year, which was pretty good money, right?
Oh, that's great money. That's top 1%
That
money.
type of is really good money. And then
So,
I had a couple of large clients. I can't disclose who they were, but I had a couple of clients that were wealthy, known public officials, public that I was able to work their cases out before their cases went public. And before they got on CNN. Because part of my strategy was if your client doesn't settle and work this out, I'll just call Wolf Blitzer or Anderson Cooper and set up an interview with CNN.
mm.
That gets a lot of lawyers to the table
Mm.
really fast.
Really fast. So, what's some things you bought with your money that you felt like you deserved it? Like some splurges you would say after you made a lot of money being a lawyer.
Well, I guess my biggest and most important splurge, if you would, was to make sure that my daughter got the best education she could. So from 0 to 3, she was in a private Christian academy school. From 3 to the 10th grade, she was at Grace Christian Academy. I paid for all of her education, even though her mom and I wasn't together. I paid for her education. I made sure her mom had a nice car, apartment, made sure they took vacations and did everything. So although we were not married anymore, I made sure that their lifestyles never changed. In fact, they escalated. So I made sure they had transportation. My daughter made sure she got $1,500 a month
Ooh.
was my child support for my daughter. Make sure she had everything she needed on top of paying her tuition. So I made sure she got a good, solid Christian education. And so it's kind of paying off because she finished high school. She's about your age. She graduated last year, 18 years old. She got her high school diploma. And in dual enrollment, she also got her associate's degree from Liberty University. And now she is a 3.7 GPA. She's getting scholarships. She just told me today that she got offered a scholarship at Florida International University. She made their top program academically. And she's at Liberty University right now. And she'll probably finish college at 20 as opposed to 22 because I was able to basically finance her entire education. So that was my biggest splurge. Other than that, I'm not a high-end person. I love Corvettes. So I got this yellow dynamic Corvette.
What year is it?
It's a 2008. It's old school. I'll show you a picture of it. But I put this $8,000 stereo in them and system in it. I call it elephants dancing. When you turn the bass up, you can hear it miles away. I'm getting suicide doors put on it. I have the special made rims
Mm.
on it. I have yellow fog lights special made for it. It's a T-top, so I put my fun into my Corvette. I have another car. I have a BMW, but that's my little get to work car.
Mm.
I have a nice house on 4 acres
Woo.
where the deers are running around. My daughter could come and run with her dog, and she loves dogs, so she had a dog. And I got her little BMW, so she has a little 2015 BMW where she drives to class and to school. And so I basically, I don't have a lot of things, a lot of high-end things,
Mm.
but what I have is mine, and it's fun. It's a budget. I really prefer doing entrepreneur ventures, investing in companies and small businesses, and helping people. So I like to have, my investment money aside, and so that's why I prefer to do it with money instead of buying high-end material things.
Mm.
So
You want to invest in me?
we can talk about it. So it's something we're gonna talk about because I think it would be a good investment.
Man, so when did you have your kid? Like, what part of your life did you have
Oh,
your
I
kid?
was finished law school. I did all that struggling with her mom. We were married at the time. We were going through all those struggles. I got accepted into the Air Force, and we got to Wright Pat Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. I did my 3 months of the JAG basic school training. We got to Ohio. I'm in my 30s. She's in her 30s, and she's like, "Okay, we've been broke all of our lives. We started. Let's have a baby." I'm like, "Okay, let's have a baby." But I was getting ready to. It was kind of the end. I was getting ready to go to Korea and do a year overseas.
Mm.
And I was like, "Let's have the baby when I get back because I want to be around. I want to be able to see your stomach growing and go to Lamaze." He was like, "Nope, nope, nope, nope. I want the baby before you leave,
Mm.
and when you get back, the baby will be born." It's nice, guys. I was like, "Okay, if that's what you want." So we tried to conceive 3 or 4 times,
Mm.
and we couldn't. We just couldn't. And so without disclosing too much, we were not able to conceive naturally.
Mm.
So I'm in the Air Force at Wright Pat, great hospitals. So she says, "Well, let's talk about in vitro fertilization." You have any idea what that is?
No, sir.
In vitro fertilization is when they take the man's sperm and they implant it in the woman's uterus.
Mm.
And it goes into, because her tubes, we were not able to conceive because of her tubes.
Mm.
And so he had to have her tubes removed. So the tubes are what carries the sperm from the man into the woman's uterus where the egg is developed.
Mm.
So because she had no tubes, after a while, they had to take my sperm and inject it in her uterus.
Mm.
So we had to pray. We had to go through all these processes and taking needles, and it took us 3 months for us to go through this whole medical process. And so we sat down, we did all that. We had the consultants at the hospital. It cost $12,000. I always tell my daughter all the time. The Air Force paid $8,000.
Mm.
I had to pay for it, so I tell my daughter, "You owe me 4 G's." All the time. "You owe me 4 G's." To this day, I tease her about it. So they put these eggs in. So he said, "We can do a whole bunch of eggs, and you can have twins, you can have quintuplets." And I'm like, "Damn, I can go from zero to all these little babies." So we're nervous. And so her and her mom, we're chopping up, we're praying, we're thinking. And she said, "Well, let's do 4 and let's see what happens." He said, "It's a chance because you're high risk, none of the eggs will take."
Mm.
So we were, apprehensive, of course. And so this is 2000, she was born in 2004, so it's like 2003. And so we put them in, and we get this call, and oh my God, one of the eggs took.
Mm.
She's pregnant. So we're rushing in, and they put the stuff on her stomach, and they let me listen. And my God, I heard a heartbeat in my wife's stomach, and my life had never been the same.
Mm.
They told me, and they showed me this little egg, and the heartbeat was growing. So she was eventually born while I was in Korea.
Mm.
I was able to come back. She was due on January 31st, 2004. So when you're over in Korea for a year, you do your hardship tour. Your family's not with you for 1 year, but you get a 30-day vacation.
Mm.
So I tried to schedule my vacation around January 31st when she was due. So I'm flying back. I get to Chicago. They're in Florida waiting for me to do that 1 year. So I'm flying back. I get from Korea to California to Chicago, and there's a freaking snowstorm.
Mm.
So I'm stuck in the hotel in Chicago January 31st. So I get this close, and I said, I'm going to miss the birth. So, of course, another pivot, right? What do pivotologists do? We pivot.
Man.
So I'm praying, say, "Okay, God, so I'm going to miss my daughter's birth, but I'll see her when she's a day old."
Mm.
So the doctors call me and say, "She's not ready. She's waiting for her father."
That's
So
deep.
come on. So I came on the next day, February 1st, we're sitting at the house, and she's pregnant, stomach 8 feet high, and I made it. So we're waiting, checking with the doctors, because she's a day late now. And she says, okay, my water break, I think Benaya is ready to come. Her name is Benaya Monique Morton, B-E-N, after Benjamin.
You
So
said Ben.
we stuck that in the beginning. So they had me check. And dude, I'm no medical person at all. That's why I went to law school. Medical school wasn't even an option.
Man.
So I had to check. And I said, yes, a head. Something like a head is coming. So that's all I can tell you. So EMS came, got her, wrapped her up, put her in the back of the EMS. They told me I couldn't go, only her. So I'm following the EMS to St. Petersburg General Hospital. And so we stop, we get out. I'm waiting. They open the door, and she comes out holding Benaya.
That's crazy.
She had the baby. I traveled all this way, all this time, and I missed the birth. But it was cool. So they come out, and we go inside, and they unwrap Benaya. She's there, this little bitty Chinese-looking angel, light skin, long black hair. White is a ghost. And so I called my mom, and I'm crying. I'm telling my mom she's here, she's here. She said, well, count her toes. She has 10 toes. I'm like, what are going to do? Count her fingers. And then she crying. I said, yeah, she have her under a lamp. She looks like a small order of fries under this little heat lamp. And she said, well, show me, tell me how she's doing. She's breathing. Everything. She said, she's fine. We have a healthy child. One child, healthy child through in vitro fertilization. And that's how Benaya was born.
Man,
And she'll be 19 in 2 weeks.
Man, that's a deep story, man.
19 years ago. So yeah, that's the best story of all the pivots. That has been my greatest pivot.
Man.
Is being her father.
So talk about how you got that opportunity to go to Africa and explain the trip to Africa and how all that became. And
Okay, so some of my friends, I guess I don't have much of a social media presence, but one of my friends kind of approached me about coming to Africa with him. They found out that I was a lawyer on Facebook. And so to make a long story short, we wound up connecting. He invited me to Africa. And I don't consider myself a public speaker, but he invited me to Africa to kind of support him because he wanted to be a public speaker. And so I went over to Africa with him, and they asked me to go ahead and speak and participate. And, being a trial lawyer, I guess I have the basics skills of speaking. So I did the presentation over there of the power of the positive pivot, and I did it in support of a friend. And from there, all these doors started opening, different opportunities. I've been invited back over to Africa on a regular basis to teach about the pivot experience and how that works. I'm here in Kansas teaching about the pivot. So a lot of things have sort of parlayed, if you will, from my experience of going over to Africa just to support a friend. And so here I am actually meeting you as a result of that as well.
man, networking is just a blessing. What you can do is being able to network.
Like I said before, it's limitless.
Man, well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I think this was a great episode. You got a lot of knowledge, great story, and thank you, man.
Definitely. It was my pleasure. I appreciate you.